Hello, it's me, Kyle. Here is GivePause Hobby. It's been a year, a whole year, more than a year at this point, since we started this whole game garage ordeal, and it's still an absolute blast. In some ways, it's even more exciting than when I began. Just because I've learned things, I've decided, what it is exactly I want to focus on, which I've discovered other things that I didn't know I was interested in. Yeah, it's been a year of discovery, and if you've been along for it, thank you. If you just are joining me at this point, thank you still. Just thanks for anyone who's watching at any point in time. I thought I would be remiss if I didn't do a kind of a 1 year retrospective video, and not just to like cheerlead what's gone on the channel, but also to thank the people who have been helpful to me, who have lent advice when it was clear that I needed it, or someone I could reach out to, or has shared the work that I've been doing, or at any point in time. I'm not going to go name by name, but if you have done any of those things, first of all, before I get into anything else, thank you so very much for helping a little kind of crazy idea channel take off the ground. As many of you know, it is not easy, and any of that help is hugely appreciated. So thank you so very much. So I thought I would go through just sort of, I organized it. It was like I was back in English or music history or music theory, kind of laying out my my paragraphs for a upcoming paper, my subjects and everything like that. So I guess now is as good a time as any, now that 1 year has gone by, what the intent, what the point of all this was. And what I really wanted to do, and I've said this a couple places elsewhere, but really the reason I got into this at all was to make the content about the root bots, about the Clockwork expansion that I was so sorely missing. I was excited to get into it. I was excited for them to arrive, and there just wasn't all that much content that existed out there, and so I kind of wanted to make it myself. And as a teacher, I know firsthand how much better I am at things that I've taught. Like, the amount of learning I do when teaching is enormous, and I think all teachers would understand that. So it's made me a much better player and teacher of Root, to go through the process of teaching them myself. So I've been considering this since about when Root Underworld hit, because I really wanted to show off the bots that made Root the game that it is. My absolute favorite game, made it be what it is because I was able to learn the rules and experiencing it without necessarily having to teach all those different factions to meatbags, especially when meatbags weren't available to teach too. This tabletopper where the game garage first took off, I actually made this during COVID lockdown because the intent was for me to stream from my phone on this to do live like board game. I mean, everyone else who's anyone in the board game space, it seems, has gotten into the various digital platforms that I have not yet, and this was kind of my still analog but digital version that I still haven't done. Maybe one day, but it's served me well. I think it's time to turn on the bug zapper again. Be right back. Longtime fans of the show will remember a big day. One of the purchases we got, a bug zapper to hang from the center of the garage. So if you hear a pop, that was one of the bugs that might otherwise be in the shot. So my reason, that was the intent of me kind of starting a channel, putting this stuff out about the root bots, and maybe dovetailing that into analog digital playing. The reason for doing it, I was desperately in need of creative outlet during COVID. As a middle school band director, I love my job. This has been a really challenging 1.5 years, as I'm imagined for most people, regardless of honestly what their job is or even their employment status. It's just been a really difficult 1.5 years. But as someone who, a big reason why I do what I do is to have that creative process with these goofball middle schoolers, to have so much of that removed, even when I was being inventive and coming up with ways of getting back in, it just wasn't the same. So it was a way for me to put a lot of energy into something rather than just spin my tires and be frustrated that I didn't have that. I'm lucky enough that my job is an outlet for that part of who I am. So if it weren't for that, who knows? I'd been considering doing something like this for a long time. Who knows if that ever would have happened were it not for pandemic and COVID and all that. The other reason is obviously my deep and abiding love for Root. I'm not going to lie. I think a big part of that was inspired by the fact that I was playing catch up. I got into Root once Riverfolk was already out, and I know that was part of the original Kickstarter, which I missed. But it took a while for me to actually finally get the game. Even once I got it, I sat on it for a long time. I had 1.5 not great first games. The second half of the second game was good, but the first not very good. So I felt like I just was, late coming to this game that I really, really, really liked. And that kind of inspired a big part of what it was that I was doing and why. So in the beginning, it just was the Game Garage. There was no such thing as GivePause hobby, and I guess I'm exposing a bit of my psychology, that I'm prone to jumping between things and interests, and it's a big reason why I'm more successful as a middle school band director than when I was a college professor for a year. Is that the higher up you get, the more benefit you get from really digging deep into something rather than casting a wide net. Whereas the opposite is true, the lower in grade level you get. Now, this isn't a hard and fast rule for everybody, but in my experience, you get more bang for your buck in the lower grade levels to have a wider spectrum of those things. You're always benefited from knowing more, but I think middle school is really where my calling led me to. And the Game Garage was a great way to start. Woodburn, the logo and everything, but GivePause is kind of an umbrella for everything, like I said in the beginning, that gave me pause in a good way. I'm kind of like reclaiming that phrase, to say, that would be a fun video, or that would be a cool project. And the name actually comes back. This will have a few little Kyle tidbits peppered throughout. Back in college, a Sharpie tag that I came up with, that the way it's laid out, GIVEPAUSE. I was like, oh, that's cool how it's a 3x3 thing, and I definitely tagged that a couple spots and thought I was pretty badass. So GivePause hobby. I was going to be GivePause, but the hobby needed to be in there for, I can't remember which, YouTube or Twitter or something. GivePause was either taken or just too short, and so GivePause hobby, because this is what I do, for all the different hobby things that I choose to spend my time on. So tracking. Again, another little tidbit, like peek behind the curtain as to who I am as a person. I love tracking things. I love spreadsheets. I love making graphs out of things. And I originally created this thing you're seeing now, which we call Friday Views, which was a way for me to do a couple of things. I wanted to be able to track how often my videos were being accessed, well before I understood the tools on YouTube. But even once I found out that they were there, like, my channel was so small that it really wouldn't be tracking things. It's designed to track things from, like, a little smaller than my channel, I guess, up to huge huge industry leading channels. And so in the early days, it was a way for me to busy myself. And throughout the week, I would just go in, I would check to see if there are any views. As a way of validation. I'm sure some of you watching can commiserate with that. And it was a way to make the gains in my viewership more real in order to celebrate them. And as I maintained this document, I realized I could open up other functionality that would provide me insight as to which videos were being consumed, and how successful the different projects were being. So with this, it quickly became evident that Root, my videos about Root were by far my most popular. But even still, there are times throughout the year I've wanted, in the spirit of GivePause, I guess, to take on new video subjects and new projects, big and small, purely because, I was interested in them. I knew that Root things, by and large, even from a pretty early time, were my most popular things. They would get the most traction, but I wanted to try other things out. For a long time, I was putting it off, trying other games out, and I finally did it, and it actually kind of pulled me down a rabbit hole. And it took a while for me to get back to the woodland and to get Root stuff back, and sure enough, that kind of shot up those views, and it's really exciting, and I'm kind of back in the smaller version of that right now, where I've been doing lots of other things, Root related, but kind of like Root adjacent. Being the fact that it's my favorite game, I'm pretty okay with spending time, but it is a little bit more logistically challenging than some of my other projects. So it takes more work on the front end and sometimes the back end too, to actually get the Root stuff up. But luckily, it's stuff that I enjoy. Over the course of the year, tracking all these has been beneficial to me. Sometimes it's led for me to decide, you know what, this project is fun, but it's just not doing well. It's not resonating with who I thought it would. Other times, well, it is warm in the garage. Other time, yeah. Speaking of which, for those of you who are newer to the channel, the whole reason I'm out here is because our house, as lovely as it is, has paper-thin walls in terms of sound, and our two wonderful children and my lovely wife. Everybody can hear everything in there, and so the garage gives me a little bit more of a buffer. I can do stuff like this out here without disturbing, right now, nap time. It just happens to sometimes be hot, sometimes be cold, and those perfect, it's Minnesota, so that little buffer in between the like dying of hot and dying of cold is our sweet spot. We are well out of that sweet spot at this point. Anyways, there are times when I recognize, like, you know what, this video or this project really isn't getting the views that I kind of expected it to or would like it to, but it's enough for me to keep enjoying it, and that's enough. But, I'm just the type of person who likes to track things so I can make those decisions. I mean, I track, being the union rep for my building, I've tracked COVID numbers in our county since late August. So I could be kind of the squeaky wheel to tell our school board, like, hey, you said this, and this is where the numbers are at. We should be responding. I've tracked running. I obviously track all my games on BG Stats. I track, money stuff like lots of people do. But unlike lots of people, for a year in 2017, I tracked my poop, and how often I pooped. I forgot to look up. Future Kyle is going to have to tell you how many times I pooped in 1 year. I saw this guy online. He tracked his poop for a year, and just to kind of see how often he did, like what his average was, what his times during the day. I don't think he did times in the day. I did. I graphed it out. So I would just like hit a 1 in there. Anytime, I did a number 2, and then I could compare my months, my seasons, my time of day. And he had, I can't remember what he called it, but there was one spot where he had just like a lot of poops, and it was the rapture. He called it the rapture. It was like 7 or 8 poops in a day. And I was like, wow, I wonder if I'll ever get anything close to that. Well, lo and behold, in December of that year, I got some sort of stomach bug, and I can't remember the exact number. Again, future Kyle will tell you. It was a concerning amount, to the point at which I was doing Google searches, like how many times diarrhea, call doctor. And yeah, it on the graph, like on just a simple line graph of poops over the year, which is pretty much just like a line, like a slope. There's a discernible like uptick because of that one day. And I refer to that as the unraveling, because I thought that is what my body was doing. Anyways, so I just get a whole ton of enjoyment out of tracking things. However, just like all those other tracking things, aside from board games, BG Stats makes it a years-long endeavor that I really think is a awesome way to deepen my love of board games. Like tracking the poop, tracking other things. At the end, I'm just like, you know what? I'm not sure if I'm going to... I think I'm done after a year or however long. Am I going to miss it? And in the case of both the tracking the poop and tracking the channel, the answer is no. That was what kind of gave me that discernible like success that the early video like content creation might not have. But it also gave me a good sense of what direction I wanted to go, which again is not always just the most popular videos. But that's got to be part of it, right? If you're only making videos purely for you to watch, that's fine, but you're probably gonna, dial back your production values a little bit. Otherwise, you might go a little bit crazy. So it's really instructive. I'm sure I'll probably find a way to pull data off of the YouTube platform and, go with that, but I won't be going in daily, or not daily but weekly, and updating every single one of my videos. A big reason I'm not doing that is because at the end of the year I have 94 videos on the channel, as in like videos that did not exist before I started tracking, before GivePause and Game Garage was created. So that's a lot of things to just update on a weekly basis. It's just a lot of work. So let's see what that content creation looks like. So in BG Stats, you're seeing it now. I actually track DBMP, design, build, model, paint, on anything. If I'm making a box insert, if I'm painting models for a game, if I'm designing a game. And in this case, anytime I'm working on GivePause. And I'll probably keep track of this just because it is part of the hobby for me. Realistically, whether it's modeling, purchasing, unfortunately, or making content, it's a stand-in, not a perfect one, but an aspect, like a facet of my love of board games. Like if I can't play them as often, maybe I'll do more content creation. So I've been tracking it in my BG Stats, and over the past year, the year that it's been, I've stopped it now for this stat, but I'm, continuing, 131 hours, over 180 instances, like individual, that's recording, that's editing, that's planning, anything like that, and at 14 different locations. So this has really kind of become a big thing in my hobby. On YouTube, I just cracked over 30,000 views, 3,273 hours of people watching, which is still a mind-blowing number. I know most of my videos trend long compared to maybe some other channels, so I just think it's just ridiculous. People have watched me for that many hours. And 342 subs. And I think I had none at the beginning of the school year, or of GivePause. However, part of this video I wanted to be for the people who are considering getting into content creation, just as like a heads up of what it takes and what it looks like. And it took me 9 weeks to get to 1,000 views. I just cracked 30,000 in a year. It took me 9 weeks to get to 1,000. It took me 27 weeks to get to 100 subs. Over 100 subs is when you can actually, like, I can't remember, something, you can make your URL for YouTube, I think, or something. Yeah, 27 weeks. That's over half of the year. So after a whole year of tracking all this, I'm fully aware that, you know, my rootbot videos are some of my are my most watched videos. And so I'm incredibly lucky that the thing that inspired me to like start this and do this at all just happened to get traction and bear fruit. But that said, some of the videos I've been most proud of to post, that I thought might pave the way to a different direction, not a different direction, but a different like avenue that GivePause might take, have been some of the lowest performing videos in the whole year. It's just like, it really doesn't make sense. And I guess that's when I say interview someone who I've listened to their stuff for years. I was like, wow, this is a really big moment for me. It doesn't necessarily mean it has to be a big moment for everybody. And clearly it isn't based on the views. But I remember I kind of remind myself that I lucked into finding the subject that worked as well as it has on my first try. But to take that knowledge and know that on all future projects, that's probably not going to be the case. You know, if something continues to not track with the audience, then maybe I go somewhere else with it. But just to keep in mind, like, not everything can be my teaching videos for the root bots, which are still, like, to this day, the first one I did for the Law of Rootbotics and the Mechanical Marquee 2.0 is my most watched video of all of them. That was my very first video. Yeah, so it's just kind of wild that has that much staying power. So at the end of the year, you know, tracking it has really helped me figure out what my audience, at least as it is now, what my audience likes, but also what I like to create, what I'm interested in, what direction I like things to go. And it's really nice for me to think about that, because a lot of times you hear people say, you know, make content that you are interested in, and that's clearly what I'm doing. You know, it was told to me by a friend that GivePause hobby is just like Kyle World, and you never quite know what's going to come out next, but it's always going to be something that I'm interested in, and I love that description. Now, I understand that for a lot of people, that's not something worth subscribing to. That's not something worth coming back to regularly, because while you might be really interested in the one or two projects on that channel, there's a bunch of stuff you don't care about. And unfortunately, being subscribed to something means you're going to get notified of everything, like it or not. But you know what? That's the whole reason that GivePause hobby exists. For me to say, this is interesting to me, I'm going to make a video. Let's see who else it's interesting to. But I thought it'd be fun to do a little lightning round of all the different projects that have happened over the year. And just to kind of give a quick read on what I thought of them and if I think there's a future for them going forward. So first off, Game Garage. Yes, there is a future for the Game Garage. I would like to think an ever improving future of me getting better at capturing with maybe multiple camera angles, with not just the iPhone hanging down from the rafters view. Yes, Game Garage will continue. Sports with Kate. Also, yes. I know this is a carryover from before this channel existed in its current format. It's just amazing how much Kate doesn't know about sports that I take for granted. Not that I'm a huge sports fan, because I'm not, but it's like things that I thought were just like baked into the human experience, but they're not. Robo Rumbles, kind of a like side project of Game Garage, super fun. And I remember at one point seeing Patrick Leader say something about how his dream of seeing, you know, robot root opponents duke it out are close to being fulfilled. And not to say that that's my animating like cause of doing the Robo Rumbles. I just think it's a lot of fun to watch the robots buzz and whir up against each other, and it'll definitely be coming back. Frost Talk with Kate, I think, is a great. I love them. I'd like them to come back more often. Just talking with my most played, you know, game companion, I think is super worthwhile. Root the Musical was a fun little weekend project, just coming up with different Broadway spoofs for the different factions. We'll come back to my fascination with Root later. My first other game, Maquis, right out here at the Game Garage, that led to Spirit Island and Kingdom Rush and other things. My piano stuff, that was a way for me mainly to share with friends and family, but it's on the channel now. Things I've written about friends and family. My first the Game Garage indoor solo review, which I'd like to do more solo reviews, but also more general reviews. I might need to change the format so it's not only solo games. Time Out With, I think I think I gotta stop for right now because I'm like literally overheating in the garage. Holy cow. So I when I was inside, just like a few minute break, I mentioned to Kate, I was like, yeah, I think that thermometer out there is broken because it says 96 degrees Fahrenheit in the garage. And she was like, no, it's like 93 outside and there's no air circulation in the garage. So it's very possible it could be. So part of the reason I'm making this is also to just, at some point when this isn't my only option for where to record, I can look back and say, wow, what was I doing? But in the spirit of that, no pain, no gain, right? So we continue onwards. Time Out With GivePause. Honestly, I think this one will probably be sunsetting. It's a fun way for me to kind of review what's going on each week, but I also a side effect of tracking something is kind of sort of wanting to do something just so it appears on there. Not that I'm like deliberately padding my numbers of just videos created, but I thought it was going to be more beneficial than it wound up being. So yeah, I probably won't continue the Time Out With GivePause. But it's been fun to just say, what I've been doing each month. But If Shelves Could Talk was something that I would really love to continue, and has honestly been my absolute biggest surprise as to not getting people interested. And I know that that's part of just like your audience and who's watching your videos. And if people are expecting root bots and reviews and other games out here on the table, maybe they're not ready for interviews with other people or interested in it, at least not with me and other people. I don't know. But I mean, talking with Jack from the Cardboard Herald was a humongous moment for me, because I've been listening to the Cardboard Herald for a while, and to be able to interact with him in that way. But then also Sam from Lord of the Board, hopefully I have some other projects that I'm working on pulling together, and I'll still continue to do If Shelves Could Talk, and I'd love for that to kind of continue to bloom. But yeah, that's absolutely been one of my biggest surprise as to are you not entertained? But it's out there, and sometimes things just take a little bit longer to find an audience, I guess. Poetic Elements was a fun, shortish project. Again, another 2-month one. I'll come back to that in another later project. I had a good time, but this directly led to a story time later on moment of something I started that I thought would be just an easy thing to throw into my weekly, workflow. We'll come back to that shortly. I made a faction flowchart. I'm super proud of this. This is for the 60-second Root competition. And not only it was in my wheelhouse, it was a poem about Root, but it was a poem about how I made the faction flowchart, which way back when, the February-ish before GivePause was a thing, I made this, and that was my first time really making content that got traction with the community. And I made a poem about it, how I made a faction flowchart, because that's how much I love this game. Tea and Pancakes, speaking of Root, my show with just me, where I talk about my rankings of the different factions and maps and everything about Root. That's for sure continuing. Story time. This was when this bug needs to find that bug zapper in a big way. Sorry, bud. Ow. So this is when the poetic elements, I for a while was putting it off, the realization, but it was just becoming just too much, and I was going into working on stuff feeling like I needed to. And this channel, I mean, it's not even monetized, let alone something that someone's deliberately paying me for. This is Give Pause Hobby is 100% a hobby, and I was like, you know what, this is stupid that I'm being this bummed out by what I'm doing. It just doesn't make sense. And so I was like the slowing down for a bit, which I've since picked up on, but it's been, as the school year is coming to a close, I'm trying to keep myself from going crazy, but also just approaching things, subject matter, and how I produce it in a different way. So I think it was definitely good. Table for Two was a long time coming, which I'm super glad it's finally out. We have other plans. That's for sure coming back. I love playing board games with Kate, and I think it makes for interesting content. So there's more of it. Asymmetric exercises. That's the other 2-month-long project. We are coming to a close. We have an eighth of the original, well, the currently 8 published factions for Root, and a trumpet exercise for each, which has been just an incredible way for me to close out the school year without becoming too focused on the end of the school year. Obviously, that has a limited shelf life, or lifespan, or shelf span. I will be doing the other 2 later on when they are officially published, but for right now, when these 8 are done, after next week, that project's done for now. Frost's Unbox is, I think, a ton of fun because I am the game gatherer for the family. So I'm the one who knows exactly what's going to be waiting for us in the box. I know all the components. I've probably read the rule book already. And Kate loves games, and she is a huge fan of the toyness of them, but she's nowhere near as invested on the front end. So unboxing isn't just me saying oh, here's that thing I couldn't wait to see. It's her seeing Oath for the first time ever, some of those components. So I thought it was a blast. We'll definitely be doing more of that. And last but not least, SWATA. So what's all this about? Insert game here. I think is for sure going to continue. I love this idea. Again, this one very much for me first, and then hopefully for other people, but to send my friends to either say, hey, here's a game idea I have that I think we'd like to play as a group. What are your, read on it, the components, which are the thing that get me to the table, and then a gist of how the game plays, the reason we stay at the table. And then I can teach them the game when and if they decide, yes, this is a game we like to play. Or in the interim, if we've decided we want to play a game, it's something I can send them and be like, hey, here's that game we have coming up. It's just a game trailer, because I think sending out reviews can be tricky, because when they get into the critical parts of it, I don't want to color any of my game group friends' opinions of a game before they've even cracked the box and experienced it. So it's just a completely upbeat, the good part, the reason we play board games, and then specifically about that one. That's a lot of different projects. I mean, there are 94 videos inside of those different categories. And I understand the reason, or, the fact that my channel hasn't been laser focused on its niche. Like if I would have stayed just with teaching Root, or whatever it may be, it might be something that those viewers who tune in for that might mainline it more often. But because I've diluted it with all these other things, sometimes they check in, sometimes they don't. And I also know that, people leave the channel. I've unsubscribed because I'm small enough that I know when that number dips. So, I've kind of come to the conclusion that for me to make a channel that's going to be honest to why I do it in the first place, which is if something inspires me to do it, I do it. That's just going to engender a certain type of audience, and it's not one that's always going to tune in, and it's not one that some people might stick around for a little while and say, what, I'm not here for all this. But that is what it is. And a huge helpful message about this, I can't remember his last name, Jack from Pomplamoose and Scary Pockets and Patreon fame, said that way earlier in Pomplamoose's career, when they were so focused on whatever it was, subs or views or whatever, there's this up down that you always get if you're tracking anything, your weight, calories eaten, the weather, COVID, games, whatever. There's going to be up and down. And you can really get bummed out when that happens. But what helped him was when you look at, instead of that like actual number, look at the additive chart, the one that's only going up. And sometimes it goes up in a more steep way, sometimes it's more leveled out, but it's only ever going up. And that's a much more positive way of looking at it, and one that has meant a lot to me. So I don't get, for a while, I don't know what it is. I know that I made a faction flowchart, got quite a few views, but back in I can't remember, February, March, April, somewhere in there, I was doing numbers I'd never seen before. We're going on 15 weeks past when I've broken into the top 5 weeks of views, I think, somewhere around there. Again, I've kind of tapped out of being that tuned in to exactly what these numbers are, and I think it's for the better. But I don't know what I was doing. I was looking at what was I putting out back then? How often was I doing root stuff as opposed to not root stuff? What was my monthly workload as opposed to not? None of it makes sense. I really have no idea. And when I was back down, I was like, this is awesome. I was on one of those steep curves and just doing things I was beating previous month's records at 3 weeks into the month. I was like, this rules. And, right now I'm not in one of those modes. It's not way up there just crushing records, but it's still making videos that I like, that I love doing and really enjoy, and other people do too. And that additive chart is still on the up. Might not be as steep as it was before. Maybe that'll come back. Maybe not. Who knows? But I'm still enjoying it, and other people are too. Well, I overheated the GoPro again. Makes sense since I am like this right now. So for those of you who are just starting this crazy journey of content creation, I guess what I would say is tap into whatever community you feel comfortable with. For me, that became Twitter, which at first I was just a lurker, and it was really uncomfortable to interact with people whose, the products they've produced are so foundational in my board game space. But it's just filled with wonderful people who are there to help, who are there to promote, who are there to collaborate. And when my videos and my content haven't come through with the numbers or whatever, it's that community that absolutely has been the most beneficial to keep me kind of moving forward, to keep that graph going up, just for the fun of doing what it is that we do. And so moving forward, I'm shutting down the Friday views. I'm really looking forward to my videos being more fire and forget, where I make something, I put all that time in, and then I put it out into the world, and then maybe I'll check back in to see how it's doing. But it's a video that exists out there, and I hope people enjoy it. And I'm not quite tracking it I've been tracking the Rootbot first video for 52 weeks. I'm intimately aware of the ups and downs of all these videos, and I'm okay with that going away, and me just saying here's a video, hope you enjoy it, and I'll see you next time. And I'm changing some of the projects I'm doing. I would love to get this garage not so hot with some home improvement ideas. I also have some new equipment. The GoPro, still getting used to that. Overheating a GoPro, I just don't understand how this happens so easily, but figure it out. But I have a new Windows computer, so I have to learn how to edit videos on that. Still would like to get better at camera angles over here on the table. And it is summer, so I'm interested in some more long form stuff that I can't always set up and accomplish during the school year. And just sort of continuing, but in more what's going to bring me joy, because hopefully that's going to translate into enjoyment on the audience side. So again, for anyone who's helped share my stuff, promote it, help me out, give me tips and feedback, or collaborate, I cannot thank you enough. And I can't wait for the day when we can all go to public events again without giving a second thought. and I can go to my first conventions and I can give some of you people like hugs in real life, because it's been an incredible year, and I'm looking forward to what year 2 of Give Pause is going to look like. I also make a new intro video, which funnily enough, that one was me being sweaty in the garage too, so it's not too far off. But again, thank you for being here, especially if you've made it all the way to this point. I love the videos I'm making. I love the people who love the videos, especially, again, if you've gotten to the bitter end of something as long as this one's going to be. It means a lot to me, and I'm glad that hopefully it means a little bit to you too. So with that, whether you are a watcher, a creator, a publisher, a enjoyer, a play, whatever you are, thanks for being here. Hope you had a blast, and have a great summer, and we will see you next time in the hot garage, the element, indoors, who knows where, doing who knows what, but enjoying ourselves nonetheless. I'll see you next time.